What's this? Wait. Oh, okay. That's the. One of. There.
Doesn't count.
Trevor, whenever you're ready.
Okay, I will call the July 19th, 2021 Bismarck Human Relations Committee to order. I will read the mission statement. The mission statement of the Bismarck Human Relations Committee is to protect and promote the personal dignity of all Bismarck citizens and eliminate any discriminatory barriers that prevent them from reaching their full human, I need you to turn the page. Human potential. Seeking to make education and compliance a meaningful and visible strategy. Recognize the value of a diverse community. The first item on the agenda is the minutes from the last meeting. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's carried. Next on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public on Teams or no one's here? Okay, we'll just jump right in. 2021 HRC goals. Diversity University. Any update there?
Brady, you're taking the lead on.
I am. We have not, Krista and I have not met. I think that will be the next step for us to actually like schedule out and then start talking about the details, and then we'll be able to come back next month with just kind of the next steps of everything, so. Sorry, it's been really busy.
No, that's okay. Just a year forewarned, the next 4 weeks for me are pretty busy. I'm gonna be out of town the first 2 weeks in August. So these next 2 weeks are kind of getting the work done that needs to be done before I go.
Okay.
So if you want to get together, like maybe for a lunch or something, and just go over it, this week or next week's probably best.
That would be great.
But a lot of it at this point is, and where we're at, we just need to identify our community volunteers, a cultural member from the community who's willing to share their culture and some of their favorite recipes. And then we just need to touch base with Kim and make sure that she still wants to go through with it and kind of identify when does the student calendar come out so we can look at dates.
Perfect.
But we'll probably.
I think they will allow you to do it this year. I would think so. You know, as far as COVID.
Yeah, I hope so. Since we didn't do it last year, I don't know if she changed her programming either though, because they do this in class time. So we just have to make sure that she wants to make it part of her curriculum. But yeah, I think with COVID precautions, I think we should hopefully be good at this point.
And I'll make sure to get your number so then we can just communicate by text and phone. So then that way it's not falling off my calendar.
Sure.
Priorities.
I like the salad at the shelter belt. So if anytime you say, hey, let's meet to chat and have salads, I'm there.
They are delicious.
They got a good menu.
Oh, gosh, no, I need to try something.
Lammy Joe sliders and the Brie LT. There you go.
Okay,
can come with us.
the next item is the municipal quality index rating.
Do you want me to take this?
So
Okay. So at this point, Brandy and I received an update on the most recent MEI that the Human Relations Committee, the National HRC,
Correct.
is looking at for 2021. It is not released to the public yet. And Brandy and I were just identifying a couple, 3 key points where we could see some movement in them in the short term, you know?
Yeah.
Where we could relay some information to the National HRC to move that final score, because this is just a draft. If we can give them relevant information that we're working on areas where we have 0 points, it will move that score already before we have a completion of those tasks. The 3 that we.
And then there was also one area we had some questions that
Yeah.
I think we'll have to connect with the administration from the city or whoever it might be to be the best person or people to answer. So,
Mhm.
sorry, Jason.
No, that's okay. This is a forward effort. We're all in this together. So the first one that we identified was an openly LGBTQ elected or appointed municipal leader. That point, what we were looking at is an LGBTQ liaison for the city, such as the police department already has. And so that is something that can be quickly identified within an administrative process and doesn't, from our understanding, would not need to go before any other thing other than it administratively within the city itself. And you could refer to the police sergeant, police chief, to see how they went about it and identify key points with that. And that could move that bar along quickly.
Is that new since Pride that they appointed this liaison?
To this police force?
Yeah.
No, that was before. That was work that Brandy had done outside of,
Correct.
yep,
Okay.
outside of the city and working with them and developing it.
So one of the reasons why they were at Bismarck Pride this year for the first time ever was because of that effort and some of those trainings I had done previously outside of this. And then the female officer who was at Pride is actually the appointed liaison.
Mhm.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yes, and then and that hasn't been updated on here.
Right.
Okay.
And so there's things that are already set in place throughout the city in different departments that if we just utilize and have the departments interact and show each other, they should be able to move this bar ahead very easily and simply. So then on that point, the second point is that the LGBTQ police liaison or task force is not noted on there at all. So a national HRC does not realize that we already have one in place. So that will already add on 10 points.
And that had happened at the very end of 2020, so they wouldn't have been updated on this 2020 score. That hadn't been identified until the very end of December after the trainings were completed.
Yep.
So it makes sense why that's not on there.
So
One of-
initially, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, so they do have an appointed liaison off of their horn, and then she is working with some other officers. And so I think they have had the discussion about either building a support task force or just having officers to help support her in that role. They do have specific community officers, and I think they're all pretty aware of Officer Horn's role. So but we do have a liaison specific in the police department for Bismarck.
So just for my notes, are you guys wanting an additional liaison, or are you just want to incorporate
So
the
the
police
city of
liaison?
Bismarck needs a separate one from the police.
It's city executive office.
Correct. And so we don't know if that would be something that the city would create a position for and have to build into a budget for 2022. Or if that's something that the city would identify an already existing employee who would be able to
Willing to step into that position.
and appropriate, not just willing, but also an appropriate individual to be that liaison. It's kind of like if the school systems appoint a teacher to be a GSA, the head of a GSA, but they are strongly opposed to LGBTQ and youth, like that would not be an appropriate person to be a liaison. And so that's something, those are some of those future discussions that we hope to have with, again, the identified departments from the city that were outlined and submitted letters of support. And but we do believe that could be something that could be done within the next 12 months that we identified in our project timeline.
I might have missed this because I was looking at this scorecard and kind of trying to figure it out, because I feel like they scored us high in some areas that I think we're lacking.
Do you have questions about it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Such as the housing, public accommodations, non-discrimination things, I'm thinking, wait, what? Non-discrimination laws specifically, I'm thinking.
Right, so we don't have that in
Yeah.
Bismarck, and I think that's where we do have to circle back around and ask some questions from the departments and be able to collect that information and say like, well, what are those policies? Can you show what those are, how they're worded? Do these apply to all departments or just the departments that, again, submitted their letters of support? And because again, the next 12 months was just kind of that information collecting and data collection, and then helping quantify to make sure that the numbers that are marked on this are accurate and appropriate, and we have a better understanding of how the city of Bismarck came to those reporting those specific numbers.
Right.
Also 12 reported hate crimes in 2019 that were reported to the FBI.
It's actually pretty accurate because it's significantly underreported in this.
So that's what I was actually thinking. But to the point that, we talked about North Dakota nice, like that kind of thing doesn't happen around here. I think we just.
And I do have data from some of the legislative work on a state level to actually show how many bias related crimes actually were committed in the state of North Dakota versus what were actually reported. So throughout the whole state, there were 18, but there's an estimated 488 that were actually committed. So
Yeah, and of those too, not all would be reported to the FBI. It would be a certain
even
level
though
of
that
crime.
is required in the state of North Dakota.
So any hate crime, regardless of the level of crime, is meant to be
Correct,
reported.
it's meant to be reported to the FBI.
But that's dependent on if the city or
Reports it.
Use it as a-
use it as a hate crime.
That's
So
interesting.
if there's no hate crime policies in place within a municipality,
Then
they
it
don't have to, they're not required to report anything. And at this point, from my understanding, there's only 2 cities in the entire state. One, Fargo. Okay, I thought Grand Forks had one at this point.
They have a non-discrimination,
Okay, but not a hate.
not a hate crime. So there's similarities, but there isn't.
Completely underrepresented in any kind of.
Well, I'm just looking at our final score and it's 63, that's what, a D? But I feel like we're probably more in the F category if we take some of these things like the non-discrimination laws and in actuality of what I would assume them to be. Would be doing even worse than what's reported here. But I think I kind of digressed because I was looking at this and I was like, wait, what? The places where I think we should have done really bad and we did fine, and so I was confused, but
This is based off of previous reporting by the city.
Correct.
So it's just trying to see where we're at. There are some that may be adjusted a little bit, but I think that we're not represented fully, such as the police liaison,
yeah,
which is 10 points added on. I think we might wash out at around 65 to 70 once we kind of adjust some of these numbers or review some of the numbers.
I'm just saying the NRA would rank people on their support for firearms much more critically
Yeah.
than we're being ranked on how we're caring for people in our community. It's just, they were very delicate, I think, in this.
Yeah.
I suppose they don't want it to look too
And
bad.
also, if you recall, so in the report that Whitney sent out, I believe you're the one who sent out the link.
Original one?
Yes, they talk about how they come up with the formula, and it does go through city commissioners, I believe, at some point of the process to confirm what is being reported, or I would have to relook because I don't want to misspeak, but there is room for review, and that was one of the reasons why, again, Jason and I agreed to take this, or felt that this project was something important to look at, because when you're looking at our score, people can kind of brush that off. And that's something that can be done with any population, right? This is specific to the queer community, but if we're looking at how are things truly being reported for any vulnerable community in Bismarck, what is the accuracy of that?
Right.
And so I, again, think this is a really great model structure and a great way to start having those conversations that are relevant to more than just one group in our city.
Especially at city leadership, because one of the places
Right.
that we scored low on leadership's public position on LGBTQ equality, 2, leadership's pro-equality legislative or policy efforts, 0.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily surprised by those scores, but I think that they need to change.
Mhm.
Um,
And to that point, I guess I'm going to bring up something that is something we as a board need to review with city administration. Enforcement mechanism in the Human Rights Commission. So we as a board are an advisory board, but across the United States, the majority of HRCs are actually policy helpers, where the recommendations from a board actually carry some weight within a municipality. And that's the reason that they're created, to protect vulnerable communities within a municipality. And so it'd be interesting as a new board member to understand the history of why this board was just an advisory board and didn't carry any weight with policy and procedure within the city itself. And something to look at. You know, I looked at a wide cross section, and we're looking at cities within very conservative, very liberal, very independent, every single one of them has a mechanism to enact, you know, pressure upon elected officials to continue to watch out for vulnerable populations within their city, especially as a counter for when policy starts coming after populations or cutting services for populations that need help, that there's recommendations that come out that have to carry weight. And it's not an easy conversation to have once a board has been settled, to relook at how you would go about doing that. But I believe that that's part of a goal for this MEI. I don't ever want to see services cut in areas for people, you know, at all. I don't want to see policies enacted that are discriminatory or things that we saw at a county level just a few years ago, you know, where a refugee population was attacked within our community. And so it's just my recommendation that this is one we should kind of throw some weight behind in trying to find out where we can stand with that.
I agree with that, and when we do that, we need to take that, you know, all the data you found, what
Yeah,
other HRCs are doing.
Geez, so when you, oh, Trevor, going,
Keep going, go ahead.
when you researched it, I know you researched different types of communities. Did you research different populations of communities?
I did not. I just have a general assumption that our country is extremely more diverse than we like to admit, and our populations are. When I look at Bismarck leaving 20 years ago in 99 plus, I came back 5 years ago, and there's a much wider diversity here than people are even admitting. I mean, you started going to events that are specifically geared, like international markets or international days of celebration. I was able to attend international churches in the area, and we have an extremely diverse population, and yet we hear from an extreme viewpoint that we don't have this here and we don't want it here, you know, and so I don't have that data. To your point, I didn't look at the diversity of populations in my assumptions, which isn't always good. There's always people with handicaps in, you know, populations that aren't always addressed or underfunded. And I apologize for my misspeaking.
I'm talking more of numbers, like is it bigger cities, smaller cities?
Oh,
That's
I
what
took
I'm-
a wide range. I was
Yeah.
looking at like Brookings, South Dakota,
Okay,
which
okay.
scored 100 out of 100 for their MEI, for their equality.
Okay,
Compared to, I went with cities around us
okay, good.
in this region. So
the
that it
same
was,
demographics,
Same
same
demographics,
demographics.
yeah.
Okay.
and I took small cities, medium-sized and large.
Yeah.
My first run through, and it was mainly when we went to the downtowners, I kind of wanted to pull that data in addressing it with a business, you know, because businesses, associations like numbers. Like, why are we looking at this? How can this affect us? What can it benefit us? So, yeah,
From an administrative point, and this is, and Whitney might have something different to offer, but having served as an employee, as a staff member of a city government, one thing that I like the direction you're going, I think two things. One, I'm not sure that this administration is the one that's gonna give us more leeway.
Yep.
I think under Mayor Warford, I think under Mayor Seminary, we maybe would have had a little leeway, and maybe I'm speaking too vocally about this, but I'm not sure this administration is gonna be the one that gives us more power. With that being said, I think, you know, when you talked about the county and the refugee population, the issues that came before them, even if we were offered more than an advisory capacity, I'm not sure that we could address those issues.
right,
Because of course, at the
Outside.
bottom line, it's gonna end up being those who are elected to serve by the community are gonna be the ones who make those decisions. So when you talk about the commission, what specific, and even like with the liaison, I guess I didn't gather that either. So for the liaison, and then if we became a commission, what are the activities that you guys would like us to be able to
Well,
accomplish?
so to jump in, one of the end goals of this specific, the MEI project, right, is to provide recommendations at the end of 12 months. And part of those recommendations can be ordinance related.
Yeah.
They can be, and so when we're thinking, again, kind of bringing it in and backing up to like going into the specific of one of the projects that we're focused on, we can, when I look at what we can do with those recommendations for LGBTQ, that recommendation would be applicable to a non-discrimination ordinance or a hate crime ordinance. And then how we can expand and build on, like, am I saying all this will happen in the next 12 months? Absolutely not, but a way as a committee to work within the confinements that we have as an advisory board is continuing to look at projects or setting aside, like even with Diversity University, finding ways to participate through our community events, continue collecting information and data, and then we have an annual report that we have to do, if I'm correct, right, Whitney? It's once a year. We can put in recommendations there, right, within our report, noting this is missing, this is missing, this is missing, or noting these services were taken away, or this ordinance is not present in Bismarck at this current time. Why is this something not, you know, like, so we can be a little more diligent and specific on what it is that we are making our top priorities. So additionally to maybe hosting an event with Diversity University, we're also making that, you know, either a specific group or a specific ordinance, whether it's already existing or it's non-existing, part of our priorities. So then we're not necessarily asking for any special treatment or advancement. We're actually working within the confinements of our expectations as an advisory board, but we're able to have a little more of that weight and merit through what our observations are, and then putting that either in our annual report or attaching it to one of our projects that we're taking on.
But as an advisory board, those are all things we can do. Like we can
As far as
recommend,
I know.
yeah, we can
Yeah,
recommend.
I was like, as far-
ordinance changes.
So yeah, like, and that's why I'm saying we don't have to ask for anything necessarily special. We would be working within what is expected of us.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to point out, so this legislative session especially, so this happened 2 years ago already, with the grocery bags, like not allowing municipalities to put in ordinances that say that cities cannot ban plastic bags. So this happened 2 years ago. That is targeting local control.
right.
This year, there was a surplus of bills that were introduced on a state level that specifically targeted municipal control or local control, that would really minimize what local governments could do with whether, I will leave examples out, but that's something that we should be very aware and considerate, even if we are. And I think to actually start conversation, we invite Mayor Bakken in and say, this is why we wanna, this is why we're making this recommendation when the time comes, or inviting him in to sit and participate in one of our meetings, inviting every city commissioner separately to come in and sit in on our meetings, whether it's something specific to them or not, just so that they are constantly aware of the conversations we're having here. And so that can be another way to have that engagement. And then when we're continuing to do things specific to, again, the index rating, bringing in those departments, starting with the ones who provided letter of support, bringing in Downtowners Association, bringing in the Chambers of Commerce, like, so that we're always inviting outside individuals in. And I think we should be doing this in general.
No, I think that's a great idea.
But that way we can continue having those discussions and not having to come up with the answers all the time, because I feel like sometimes we take on that ownership when we don't necessarily have to. It's always great to
Because
have
we
that.
don't have an enforcement mechanism.
But that's where I was wondering,
That, I think that's where.
and that
we
was,
have
that was the
outside
question I had, was if we did have, I'm not sure that they're gonna give us an enforcement mechanism.
Long term.
Yeah,
That's the Hail Mary.
yeah,
But that's part of the conversation.
but if it's part of the conversation, what I'm trying to find out is what power do we want to have? Because if we don't know what the power is, then how do we ask for it?
I don't know if that should be some, like, a how, like, as an advisory committee, I like where we're at. I think when we're thinking about moving power into positions, that's something that should be recommended into the budget or recommended into paid city
Staff.
employees, because we're all volunteers. And so when I'm thinking about someone who's reading complaints that are filed to the city or upholding ordinances or
Right.
things like that, to me, I think of like, that should be a paid.
And they sit on the board with us.
Yeah.
Does the city have a code enforcement officer? I know in Mandan they had one. Typically it was property disputes, if somebody wasn't keeping their yard picked up, or is there anybody at the city that?
There's different people in different departments, like for building inspections, Brady Woloskowski, he's the one that oversees that for like environmental health. And Tone Sattler, he does. Yeah, I mean, they kind of work together.
But there's not somebody who overarching, so if we had a discrimination policy, there's,
These department specific.
okay,
PD handles their, like parking violations if somebody's parking on the street for too long with a camper, things like that. We control somebody at Public Works handles those.
so if the city have an ordinance regarding discrimination, I mean, obviously housing discrimination or something would probably end up building. Or like, how would it be enforced if we put these ordinances in there?
Organization or a state thing.
And I'm gonna defer to the city attorney on that one.
Yeah.
So I don't wanna say, but it depends on what power we have through city ordinance.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a lot of power within our code of ordinances to handle things like that.
It's
a great question.
And I'm not sure that, if we're just adding discrimination policy in there, I'm not certain that, if we did propose something along that, we want an enforcement arm for the policies that we're drafting, I can't imagine that that would be enough work for one person. You can't create a role for somebody to be here. It would have to be a duty assigned to somebody who's.
And as far as it would depend on the amount of complaints we have or things like that, because right now, I think we've had maybe one come in since I've been in administration to, the discrimination complaints. So in 5
How
years,
was that handled? Did that go to Jason then?
I think it went over to the police department.
Okay.
But that, in cases like that, it would just depend on the number and whether or not our ordinances give us the power to enforce that type of situation too.
I am 100%, if we wanna, work with the city attorney to change ordinances based on what we see here, like, non-discriminate, have some non-discrimination ordinances in there, whatever you guys see. I just don't see that we're gonna have an enforcement arm come out of it. I'd love it if we did, but, like when we talk about a commission or having a little bit more power beyond advisory board, I'm probably a naysayer, but I've served on enough city committees to know how hard it is even to get an ordinance changed, you know?
Like most things, even if you have a committee, you know, like planning and zoning.
Yeah.
They still go to the commission for
Yeah.
final approval, so it's.
So to that point, I think for us, just to get some, if this needs to be done by the end of the month, an update on this for the MEI draft. I think making sure that we recognize the police liaison.
Correct.
If administration in the short 2 weeks that you have could look at a possible city, how do they phrase it? An LGBTQ liaison in city executive offices in talking with the police chief about how they went about it, because she was a current employee at the time who pitched it up, correct?
She's still,
Right, no, but I mean, when she took on that.
Right,
role as
but-
the liaison.
you, like, the city can't just be like, hey,
No.
you're employed,
No, no,
you're gonna be
no.
the liaison, so I
No,
can
I
beef
know
up
that.
this number.
I'm
Like,
thinking,
oh, I was like.
so they get asked how they went about it.
I'm still like, I think I'm missing, what would the city liaison do? Like, what would their role be? Do we know?
There is more detail in this than just the scorecard.
Okay,
So there, it goes into detail about what their
what the role would
duty
be,
would be.
okay.
I'll help you
I was
find it.
gonna say, I haven't looked that closely into
Help you
it, but
find it. And then if that's okay, I can help.
if you want, Jason is on vacation this week, but if you wanna kind of set up an email, cause he'd be the point for that.
Okay.
Be checking emails Friday, I imagine.
And you might wanna attach that, or, you know, if you can find it, so you know what the responsibilities would be. Otherwise, I don't know in 2 weeks if we get it done.
No, and I think those two are the two starting points to get some traction, and we wanted to look at what did we want to look at that we didn't think was quite right?
Housing and then the leader at the very bottom where there was a 2 on that leadership.
Oh, I mean, I think that's accurate.
I think
the
it's
2?
lower, I think it's 0.
Okay,
I was like, I wanna know where the
mean-
2 came
This
from.
could be past reporting, when we actually did have more of a
0.
public position on LGBTQ equality in leadership. Like we
And-
did with seminary and some of the,
Right, so it's a 0 because we just had there hasn't been that.
we do have like, in some of our city commissioners, like Nancy Guy, we have some people who would really strongly push
So that'd
equality,
be
so,
1. So we have 1, not 2.
I mean,
right,
I'm not gonna say for sure it's a 1, but we're probably not far off with 1 or 2, yeah.
If we average a 0 and a 2.
Yeah. I think, the biggest one for me was seeing the state, yeah, like how highly they scored the state, cause I'm like, no, we literally just had this in the legislative session, it was horrible,
Yeah,
you
it
know?
was really.
would be because they're recognizing states as being dictated by federal policy. In my
Okay.
understanding.
Yeah, I
that's the
would wonder
only
if
way I
it
could
was
think
that.
That it's not literal state policy, but that it is an enforced state guidance by federal government.
Yeah, that's the
I'll
only
look
thing
into
that
that a
makes,
little
yeah.
bit more too.
Well, and I have connections with some people from Fair Plains, or excuse me, White Plains Fair Housing. That could probably help better understand.
Kelly Gore,
Yep,
But I think like what you guys are working on is absolutely great, this is exactly the kind of stuff we should be working on, I think this is cool.
Do they have a scoring system like that for other vulnerable populations?
I think some do. I don't, when the problem is like, just because this is really specific to like, obviously my interest, like, I haven't looked at other, but I know that there are national organizations that do track states for different things. And so I think some communities and populations of people still are significantly underrated. And that's what tends to be found more often, versus like a broken down detail thing like the MEI.
That's
That's the
a
only-
good point, because once we get through this
Yeah.
and we kind of learn, because this is, we're learning as we go here, right? Once we get through, this, goal, complete it, put a check mark behind it, it might be good to look at some of those other populations,
Yeah.
whether they're, immigrants and refugees,
Disability, yeah,
disabilities,
minority religions.
Yeah.
What I usually hear is what isn't found. And so like, this is what is and isn't found, and so that's helpful, but I think that's exactly it. Krista is like, what are ways, or how do we go about finding other ways that we've been scored in different communities? Because, I think we have one, but we know that there's so many more communities that are represented within Bismarck.
And rather than biting off more than we can chew.
Right.
Chew, if we focus on one area, we can do it well, and then we can give the same attention to the next population, yeah.
Yeah, and then know, like, do we need a full 12-month timeline? Maybe we only need 6, or maybe we need 8, like, this is kind of a trial run for everything.
I think that's great.
I hate to leave this conversation because it's really engaging and I'm loving it, but I do have to like leave for my kids' appointments.
If you do leave, we still have forms.
Okay.
And it's like, I'm like, Cook County, I'm like, yeah, there's not here.
I'm like, my kid, it's not me.
Do we need a vote on any of this, or is?
Yeah, like, is there
And
anything?
we haven't really made any decisions, it's just,
And well, and I don't think we're voting on.
Last thing I would ask, is there any way you can pull, if you wanna grab the MBI, any kind of statistics on the municipal services? Do we provide anything on these flex, which is youth bullying prevention for city services to LGBTQ youth, people experiencing homelessness in the LGBTQ community, older adults, people living with HIV or AIDS, and transgender community for city services? Is that, we don't know. Unless we ask, we don't know, because the city service
Yeah.
can be dictated as what the Department of Health does.
Yeah.
What Renee Mock has in place. If it's there, our goal with this is to make it citywide department. So that not just one area of our city is going, come, you're okay. We're making our city welcoming, our city. And once we do that at an administrative and department level, we take that and we flip it into the business community, which is desperately wanting this.
And for the health and the human services working together.
Yeah.
Which is a huge thing.
Yeah.
I think we need to reconnect with Renee, and I know she said she'd be willing to come in to our meeting at any time and actually like have this discussion with us.
You want me to take that to her, since that's more, they're all more
I was
services?
gonna say, I think the Police Youth Bureau would probably work closely with the bullying prevention.
Okay.
But the homelessness definitely, and the different services, that would be more public related, so.
I'll get
and
together
if-
with Renee,
Yeah,
and then I'll flip that, I'll bring her
Let me
information.
know when you do that, I'd like to be there.
If we're appointing it, that's.
I have to work with some
staff
like
liaison.
transgender youth, and then like I can
Just
tell
leave it
you
on that, because then action can be on this meeting.
what I know.
because you would want the staff liaison prior to the, I don't know.
But I think you were
staff
saying by the end
prior-
of the July was what you wanted, right?
Yes,
So you want a staff
Yeah,
liaison
I,
before the end of July?
no way could that be appointed properly. There's no way we could get adequate training and appropriate training and
it does not need to be appointed to affect our score. We have to show that we're in the process of moving that bar. If there is a way you feel that the administrative offices can show
I think,
that you are willing to move that bar, that would affect our score.
I think a motion from this committee might be something that would be helpful for that. And that's where I'm wondering if we need something on the record, right?
I was gonna say.
do we want quantity or do we want quality? And
I
like this
believe
word,
we would like some movement, and if we continue month after month with not any movement,
true.
it's going to die.
If it has to come from the city commission, I know that won't happen before the end of the month,
It doesn't.
but if you guys have, if you provide a recommendation to city administration, you could do that.
How about this? I'd like to make a motion that the Bismarck administrative offices have a conversation with Police Chief
Triovich.
Dreyevich. I always want to add a K or Dreyevich, into how they could implement in the executive offices the same, oh God, it's bad.
Staff liaison,
A staff liaison.
LGBTQ plus, please.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Oh, Darcy, go ahead.
Any further discussion?
Okay.
If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Next item is.
I'm sorry, I have to see.
Happy appointment.
The junior liaisons.
So who was the first? Jason made the motion and then Darcy seconded. Sorry, Trevor, go ahead.
Any update on student liaisons? Jason was supposed to have an update on.
It's a letter.
Yeah, there was a letter attached, Jason provided that to me after I mailed your agenda, I think.
It looks like he met with Superintendent Dr. Jason Hornbacher in June 2021 to discuss a variety of different things, including engaging the student liaisons, the annual poetry and essay contest, and the design and development of an updated logo for HRC's use. He said that the City of Bismarck strategic plan and the strategic plan of Bismarck Public Schools have areas of overlap where those goals and initiatives could be achieved by working directly with BPS staff. So Dr. Hornbacher told him that they should reconnect at the end of July to ensure communications between Jason and individuals at Bismarck Public Schools have begun. So I imagine he'll have more of an update for us on what that looks like at the August meeting.
I do have a question though, and Anisha's not here. So what we had discussed, and it's not in here, last meeting as well, was for Manisha and myself
Yeah.
to go before the school board.
Hornbacher said that they have so many people backlogged to speak at
I don't know why.
After COVID, they've got so many people that they've been trying to slowly bring into the meetings that now is probably not the best time. But with the individuals that he mentioned working with, that they'll have a broader reach so that, it wouldn't be a dire for us to get on the school board agenda.
So potentially email Manisha and just let her know, since she's not on here, so she's not like preparing this thing.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we're not going.
This really sounds, honestly though, like.
This looks more promising than.
Right, then going to the school board, but you're right, you should make sure Manisha knows, so she's not working hard on something that doesn't come to fruition, but, yeah, this sounds like there's a lot of promise.
Do we have to like, in this thing, he said if HRC is supportive of this process, I would be happy to continue to serve as a point person. Do we have to make a motion for anything like that, that we're okay with Jason being the person who's the liaison between the city and us and the school board? Or the superintendent?
I mean, unless we're naming him an official liaison, I think he would just be the person making the contact.
Okay.
And so a lot of the actions that come out of this committee, to my understanding, Whitney, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the actions that come out of this committee are taken on by our liaisons, and Jason and Whitney would already be our liaisons to the committee, our staff liaisons. And then, of course, Mayor Bach is our portfolio holder, so I'm not sure if we need a motion to have the three of you doing tasks, right?
I don't think so, he'll just, probably have an update for you guys at the next meeting.
Okay, can someone turn the page?
We missed letter C on the HRC goals, the participate community events.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, let's do that one. Any update on community events?
Can't think of anything going on.
Who was the one that was gonna give information to us
Yeah.
regarding Dakota Media Access,
No,
the Jason
that's
as
not-
well?
No?
Was it No, it wasn't.
I thought
Was
it
that
was-
regarding like the radio ads?
Yeah.
That's the PSAs?
Probably Jason, and right now, everything through DMA is on hold because there's still not in their building yet.
I think they're in there.
They're in, but they're not
Yep.
set up to,
Okay.
to do things, he still not had a chance to do, whatever this.
Is there something specific? I know we had talked about going on TV like North Dakota today. Is there something specific that we would want to focus on as far as the things that we're doing to go on there that we could approach them about?
I think like the cultural dinner coming up would be a
Yes.
great opportunity
Yeah.
for that, because, so part of the reasons why that initiative came to be was we wanted to, like, one, what's the best way to connect people, through food, right? So that was one of them, but it wasn't just about selling tickets to an event. By working with the schools, there's an educational component. You're teaching the students about their food, their culture, and they're meeting people from different cultures. So there's a couple points that would be good discussion points on North Dakota today. I think without having an event or an initiative to talk about going on the
We
show.
need to, that's what I'm
We really
thinking,
need to
something
help,
to talk about specifically.
So the cultural dinner being our first diversity university event in a long time, that would be the one that I think we'd want to reach out on.
Yeah.
Studio 701, North Dakota today,
But when does that typically take place?
November.
Okay, so it's not
A
too far,
little bit of
yeah.
time.
And we gotta make sure that Kim wants us back at this point.
Yes.
Or that Kim's still teaching the class there, right? Cause she's got to plan her curriculum, so Brandy and I really need to meet on that to get that started. So hopefully by the August meeting, we're able to give an update. It kind of is having done it now for 4 or 5 years, it's like our
Hurry up and wait.
hurry up and wait, yeah, like we need to find our community volunteer who's gonna teach in the classroom. And then, usually we do that, and then we reach out to Kim, and it's kind of well, the calendar hasn't come out yet, reach out to me by this date, and then usually I reach out, and the calendar still isn't out yet, right? So it's kind of like a hurry up and wait, and then we sit down with the volunteer, the teacher, and the members of this committee that are gonna be involved. We come up with the menu, we discuss pricing, and then there's a break until like the week before the cultural dinner when the volunteer comes to the classroom. So it's like a lot of hurry up and wait. But yeah, we should definitely have that initial conversation with Kim. But I don't wanna go out and do that. I don't wanna let Brandon take any initiative. I wanna just be here to support. I would hate, this was my baby, this was my project that I brought to the committee. I'd hate to see it die, so I just want somebody to have that, I guess the know-how and wherewithal that you can carry it on. And when I'm gone, I think January is the last, that's it. I can't serve after that. I mean, I'm certainly available if anyone has questions on anything, but I'm guessing the city's not gonna make an exception to let me serve again. But yeah, so,
We could change the ordinance.
yeah.
Have a 2-term max for me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could. No, I think we need fresh ideas. My ideas are I'm probably in that point now in my term of service where I feel like I'm the naysayer more often than not, like this isn't gonna work, we've been through this, it won't work. And I feel like you guys need somebody who's, not that I don't want it to happen, but I've been through the disappointments. I think you guys need somebody with renewed energy and purpose and ideas.
Do you have a list of who the previous community members were?
Yeah, so Paul Zanda, who briefly served on this committee, he was our Liberian volunteer.
He was actually here last week.
Was he?
Yep.
I saw you
Came up
do a
to
live
say
video
hi.
yesterday,
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't watch it, but I saw you did a live video. He's doing well then?
Mhm.
Good. So Paul served on it briefly. He was our Liberian volunteer. Aruna, that, yep, she was our very first one. She did Indian cuisine. We had a couple Filipino ladies. I have their names. There were a few of them involved though, who did Filipino cuisine, and then I don't remember the name of the gal who did the Guatemalan cuisine, but I had that written down somewhere. So it was Liberian, Guatemalan, Indian, and Filipino were the ones who've done. You guys find a Moroccan person, I will bring their,
Great.
no more fish.
My brother-in-law makes the best Middle Eastern food, but he lives in Minneapolis, so that would probably work. Chicken shawarma,
Oh,
hummus, and.
and he's from, like,
No, he knows from, the Middle East, like, Palestine, Egypt area. Yeah,
do you think he'd do it?
no, he lives in Minnesota.
I'm making chicken shawarma.
What about Filipino and Indian?
Indian, yes.
Thank you.
And Aruna would be a good resource if you know her, if not, I have her number, but she used to run the international committee, so she knows a lot of people from different cultural backgrounds, but we might be able to reach them too. But the Liberian food was, I feel like it was very different.
Yeah.
Were you there for that?
No.
Like the fish still had bones in it, it was very specific that we had to use the fish with bones in it, and then I think that, last minute Kim changed it, she's like, I just feel like this is a liability issue, someone's gonna choke, but, and then the cassava leaves, that was a bit of an experience. So I'd say like, well, I think it's great to introduce people to something completely different, I think that, that might have been a bit too out there for a lot of our North Dakota miners.
Especially with the German and Swedish cuisine, it's not as flavorful and definitely not different.
Yeah,
It's, I mean,
like the cassava leaves, it tasted like you were eating earth, like you were eating dirt. It was very weird texture and the flavor was like dirt. And for them, like Liberia is a very poor country, so this is the type of food they eat, but yeah, it wasn't, it was different. It was very different.
Would Global Neighbors have views of people maybe?
They might, we used to have a connection with Leah Hargrove, I don't know the new executive director who was recently appointed, but they'd be a good one to team up with. I know they've done their, like they have an event where it's like photography, like local photographers will take pictures of new Americans. And they invite people up to meet, like view the pictures and meet the person behind the picture and hear their stories.
Okay, that's.
I think we as a committee have talked about doing along those lines, about doing something similar where we would work with, students to like pair them with a member of our community who's from a different cultural background to do like some sort of an art project whether it's photography or a painting or writing, like telling their story. I mean, that could be something that could be done down the road if we were to do something similar, but that, I'm digressing.
Yeah. I love it. What do you think, Trevor? Keep going.
No, I keep going. Next item is what's left, am I missing?
Just other business, I think.
Any other business? I was just gonna bring up, maybe, I don't know how picky we need to be getting on these things, but to reach out to them, calling and see if he plans to continue. I don't see him a lot here, so
That's a good point, Darcy. We put a policy, is that the correct? Yeah, we have a policy, attendance policy for this committee. If he's missed more than 4 meetings, generally we would, I think ask for his resignation from the committee. And I feel like he's likely missed more than 4. You have the attendance in front of you, Whitney.
I do not.
But he wasn't at this one, he wasn't at the last one. I don't think he was at one earlier this year. So he's probably there.
and I know Darcy's got some things going on, so I could probably reach out if that's okay, Kristen. Too, and maybe Jason and I, or something, can reach out.
Yeah, I think whoever wants to reach out would be fine. I mean, I should share, it kind of fell on me. But if Darcy's unable to do it, and you wanted to do it, you'd be the next
What
one.
do I need to say, Chris?
Well, I think our policy was after 4 absences, you would be removed from the committee. So at this point, if he's already met missed four, I think the reach out, traditionally, you would reach out at the third absence to advise them, or no, you can miss four. So if he's missed four, then the reach out would be, if you miss one more meeting, you know, it would be considered your resignation.
Okay, I want to ask a question about that because just to kind of understand.
This is just.
It's just four. So then that would be,
What happens, I mean, I can understand, how could I put it? Knowing that things come up, whatever, I guess I look at it like if you call, at least letting them know, to me, it's a matter of respect.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think, to be honest, Darcy, I can tell you why we put it in place, the policy in place, because that was, you know, probably right before you came on. We had that year several meetings where we didn't have a quorum and we weren't able to do business because people weren't showing up and it was the same three people. And we had to have a way,
There's something on the agenda.
we had to have a way to remove. We need people here who are showing up to meetings, otherwise this committee can't function. So if somebody's missing, you know, essentially, he's already missed a quarter of the meeting this year.
Well, okay, so I wanna understand, I'm just trying to understand this here.
No, a third, we got this now, a third of the meeting this year.
So say like last year, is everything's kind of scratched off, like say for this year,
If
and
it's,
starting like a new year?
Yes.
January, I'm assuming.
So you're required as, when you sign on to this committee, the information that's mailed out to you says that your expectations as a member of the Human Relations Committee are that you need to attend 8 out of 12 meetings in a year. So if he's only missed 4, if he misses one more meeting, then
So like next month,
anytime before the end of the year. So August, September, October, November, December. So he has to attend the next 5 meetings to remain in good standing on the committee.
Yeah.
We would like him to.
Yes.
We
Well-
appreciate everyone who's on the board, you know.
So the way that you would approach it, I think, Trevor, if you're making that call, is just, hey, you know, we've missed you, you know, I've noticed that we've missed you several meetings this year. I just wanted to reach out and see how you're doing and, you know, have a conversation with him, see if he offers that, you know, any feedback. And then at that point, I would probably say, you know, in order for our committee to complete its work, it's
We need to
attendance,
do it.
yeah, we need to hear, attendance is really important. You know, our policy requires you to attend 8 out of the 12 meetings, so you're. We
I
really
feel
need you
that
to
things
attend the
can
next
come
one.
up, and so that you might,
And we've had issues like that in the past. One of the people who wasn't showing up, there was something that came up and we made an exception.
and I do know with colleague, you know, he's even that day said, yeah, I'm gonna be there. And then the next day he's like, I'm sorry, I got stuck at work. I couldn't
Yeah.
leave. And so I'm not sure what he does. But for whatever reason, his work has kept him there.
And it's not coming from we're not mad at him. This isn't coming from an
Right.
angry place, but,
We
It
just
comes-
need to be
yeah.
able to function.
Yeah.
right. It's the idea of, for example, if you hadn't been here today, right? And Brandy had to leave, we would have had to end all business.
Yeah.
You have to have a quorum, you have to have a certain number of people.
Right, so
Fine,
Annette's not here, Colley's not here, I'm not sure who else is meeting, but, or who isn't here today, but the point being, things are gonna come up for all of us who are not able to attend a meeting. If one person isn't consistently showing up, that puts an unrealistic expectation on the rest of the committee members. And could prevent us from doing business, so it's not coming from a place of we're mad that you're not showing up, it's just, we
We
need you
need you
here
to be here, yeah.
to conduct business. And we did, like I said, in the past, there was one person who had a heart condition, there was an emergency, or he communicated with you that there was something going on with his heart, he had to have a procedure, and we were willing to make exceptions for that, for extenuating circumstances like that. But those are things that have to be communicated to us, otherwise we're gonna go to the policy.
well, I guess that's why I'm said the calling, because to me, that's a matter of respect, so that people know.
Right, and we're gonna call him and let him know, but we should tell him before he misses that 5th meeting. You know, hey, you've missed 4, And if it is work, if his schedule doesn't allow him to attend the meetings, then maybe it's a polite, opportunity to say, maybe he feels guilty, he doesn't wanna step down from the committee, but he can't be here, so the conversation, yeah, definitely needs to happen, but at the same time, we have to, I think, hold all of the committee members to the same standard, unless there is a really,
Then you had any circumstance.
Yes.
And I wouldn't mind, I was gonna talk to Jason tonight with me, and I was gonna talk to you two after, but I thought I would bring it up here, just to make sure we're doing correct protocol.
yeah. I mean, it's just, well, this is a volunteer job, it's still, we're still tasked with certain things, and, you wouldn't, if you couldn't show up to work half the time, you wouldn't have a job, so it's the idea of, when you accept that responsibility, you have to be held accountable to it, is, I guess, the delicate way to put it, and we don't wanna be mean about it, but certainly a conversation that probably should be had, and
So I will reach out, or maybe you can help me with that.
Yeah, and,
Point, I know I have some medical thing that just came up today, so I need to deal with those too, but I can reach out if we can do a.
Well, and I would be willing to help you out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just.
and I would say only have one person call, we don't wanna gang up on him. Whether Darcy as chair, if that's something you have, like, the time.
Yeah, we and I'll
to do.
work it out, and who can do it.
But yeah, I would, it's just one phone call, just kind of a gentle conversation saying, we love having you on the committee and we really want you to continue, but, we do have this attendance policy and I'm just wondering, are you?
Well,
able
then do we have to let like the city commission know that too then?
No.
No,
it'd just be after the resignation, we would have the city commission remove them from the term so that we could put another person.
but it wouldn't be a public thing where it would be announced.
No, but I mean, I just,
So it would be two calls, if he were to come off the committee, there would be two calls, one, the first call to just make him aware of the attendance policy in case, maybe he's unaware of it. And to say, we need you here for these meetings, we really want you to stay on the committee if you're able to. If he says, nope, I'm gonna attend the next 5 meetings, I wanna stay on the committee, I'll make sure I'm there,
That's it.
that's it, until he misses another one, right? And then you make a follow-up call and say, hey, if you remember our previous conversation, I saw you missed, yesterday, and then you have that difficult conversation of, we're gonna need to fill that position so that we can continue doing business. But on the other hand, if he attends the next 5 meetings, then it was just this one phone call, right?
okay, now how does that work out for myself? Because knowing that I was late today and
Yeah.
like last month.
But you're here.
Yeah, you're here.
Yeah.
It's
Being
just-
late is different than not attending at all. An absence. Being late is different than an absence. And I think just in all fairness, to just take a look at attendance
Yeah, I'll
across
go
the
over it,
board.
not just his.
Yes,
Right.
please.
I mean, to be honest, today, I thought about it myself, like if I could, I just have a lot to do. These next 2 weeks are kind of crunch time for work. But I think I missed 2. So in the back of my mind, I was like, nope, don't miss, because something else might come up and then you can't be there. And so I think it just, all of us being aware of our attendance is just important, so that,
And I don't know how many people, Whitney always sends out the agenda as a reminder to let her know they're not gonna be there. So I'm hoping that the people, the most part that aren't gonna be here are letting her know
Right.
that.
It's the first time that people didn't say, hey, I'm gonna be at the meeting, or hey, I'm not gonna be at the meeting. I kind of looked at it, it was like 4 o'clock and I'm like, shoot, I didn't even send out a quorum
yeah.
message that I just got so wrapped up in what I was doing that it,
Cause usually you call or whatever, and kind of ask if you were going to be there or whatever.
And she didn't, that wasn't something that was always done either.
Right.
She started that after we had three people removed from the committee because they weren't participating. So that came after this policy was implemented. And that, like I said, there were at least 2 or 3 meetings that year, that committee year, that we couldn't proceed with business, and people were coming forward with things that needed to be approved so that they could move the diversity university events forward. But not enough committee members showed up, so then we had to schedule special meetings, or we had to, kind of drop the ball on certain things we were working on. So projects get moved down the line and don't get completed, events don't happen, so it's just.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.